Always fun when the Sabres play the Panthers, and we get it tonight at KeyBank Center. Let's revisit the Sam Reinhart trade coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Sabres and Panthers. I love when the Sabres play the Panthers. You always get fireworks. Today, we'll get into a lot about Sam Reinhart returning again. He's been back before, but returning to Buffalo as both a Hart Trophy candidate, a little bit further down the list, probably not that likely, but a candidate. He's listed on the odds. He is a Rocket Richard favorite, only behind Austin Matthews, and he is someone that has a real case for the Selke Trophy. He might win an NHL award this year. He is an upcoming free agent. We are a couple of years removed from the Sabres trading him away to Florida. Sabres are, I think, modestly happy with their end, too. So we'll revisit how that trade is looking. Annual check-in on the Reinhart trade. We'll talk Sabres and Panthers. Florida, to me, the best team in the Atlantic Division, top to bottom. I think they are primed and ready to make another run at a cup. We're going to get you my best bet of the night a little bit later on. I'm feeling good. We're going to hit a parlay today. I got that coming to you a little bit later on. I do want to talk about UC Saros, and I told you on our last show that we will do that. He is reportedly available for trade out of Nashville, according to Elliot Friedman. I'll push that off to a different show because I do want to do that in full. I got a lot to say on UC Saros, and our last show, we talked a little bit about him, but more so on the idea of trading Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, or do you sign Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who has had an awesome season. He'll be between the pipes again against Florida, but they got to pay him something. Maybe it's a bridge deal. I told you I think that's what's most likely. They could give him a long-term extension, or they could sell high on him. I kind of lean towards the idea of selling high if you can get something of real value. Otherwise, you pay him a bridge deal. I would not want to give him the 7-year deal. Bridge deal, back as the number one goaltender next year, and I do think that is by far the most likely outcome. Some text in on this from our Locked On Sabres text line, which you can sign up for at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. That's the only time you got to do it on the internet. You go to that site, you sign up, put your number in there, and then it's all text from there on. And a couple of texts on this. One listener responds with, keep UPL and let Levi develop. UPL can hold the line. I think we can get something good for Middlestat, Savoy, or Oslin, and a draft pick. Essentially saying that's your avenue to get the top 4 defensemen that you should go shoot for, not Luukkonen. Another text on this subject. It's always been our plan to let him develop, and we've done it the right way. Our plan with him is working out perfectly. Why would we move on now? Of course, he has value on the market, but I don't think you move this guy with Levi having so much less experience. That is a good point. For me, it's why I keep mentioning Saros. I don't just want to trade UPL in a vacuum. I want to do it where I'm getting something up front and I'm replacing Luukkonen with something more stable or even more of an upgrade. If that can be had, because he's good and he's had this season, but that comment about how they've developed him, they have, and the patience has paid off, but listen, the Sabres have not trusted him fully all the way through these last couple of years. I mean, at the end of last season, he couldn't even get on the bench to be the backup in their most important games. And I don't know if anybody offered them anything this past summer for him, I kind of think they would have moved him, but he didn't have value around the league. And they began the season, remember where we were. Levi played the first 4 games, then Comrie played. right? Luukkonen was third in the rotation to begin the season. The first 6 games of the year. And remember, this is because Comrie had a good preseason and Luukkonen didn't. And at the end of last year, Comrie was the number 2, Luukkonen was the number 3. And they began the year Levi, Comrie. So only give the Sabres so much credit for the development of Luukkonen. Luukkonen's done a great job. But also, there weren't signs that this was coming. I was trying to read the tea leaves, and I ended up being wrong on Luukkonen by a lot. But if you're reading the tea leaves, you had an organization that wasn't seemingly trusting him, and you had years of development in the ECHL, the AHL, and then in the NHL, where there were no signs, no big signs that he was about to do this. But here we are. He has done it after playing none of the first 6 games. He has taken over the net, and he is the number 1 goaltender. So that's a little bit on the development. Yes, they've done a good job. They've gotten here, but there were times where I think they would have moved on had they had the right opportunity to do so. And then finally on this subject, a text from another listener. Should we have any concern about his workload with his injury history? I love UPL, just nervous with the injury track record. It's worth thinking about, but it's been a couple of years. He had that major hip surgery when he was a prospect, and he has had a couple of years in between. So yes, he still has those nagging injuries here and there, but for now, he's playing all these games. He's got a day in between. He's not getting hurt. I think you just keep rolling with it until it stops. So that's what we're looking at for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. When we come back, let's revisit the Sam Reinhart trade, and we'll talk Sabres and Panthers. What is the status for both sides? Are both sides happy? Is this going to be one of those win-win trades? Coming back here on the Locked on Sabres podcast, brought to you by Game Time. This game tonight, if you want to check out what's available for you, hey, listen, one of the positives, and there's not many, but one of the positives when the team's not that great is it doesn't always cost you a ton to get in the building. So check out the Game Time app. You never should have to worry about where you're getting your tickets. And Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, not just hockey, but music, comedy, theater events near you as well. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You get the view from your seat. You're scrolling through the app, and sometimes you have to guess on other apps of where your angle is going to be, how high up you are. Take all that away with Game Time because they've got the view right there. You can click on and you're going to see exactly what you'll be looking at. Plus, their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have deals on Game Time right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. The best place to find last-minute tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today. A lot of NBA coverage coming your way in the next couple of months. You got some football offseason stuff as well. Find it today in the Fire TV channels app for free. All right, Sabres and Panthers. It is another visit back to Buffalo by Sam Reinhart, and he is a story in the league. He is sitting on 39 goals. It is not even midway through April. Actually, we are midway through April, excuse me. We're the middle of February. I'm getting the months wrong here. The middle of February, and he's got 39 goals. He is 3 behind Austin Matthews for the league lead in that Rocket Richard race. It is a 2-horse race. It's Matthews at 42. It is Reinhart at 39. And then Kucherov is down at 34. So it's a 2-horse race as of right now. So there's that. There's his being 7th in the odds to win the Hart Trophy. And I actually think he has a real case for it. I would not give it to him. I would give it to McDavid every single year, personally. So I'm never the person to ask that of. The Selke, though, is also very possible for Reinhart. He's always been underrated as a two-way player, but in the last year or two in Florida, he's really taken off. This year, the Athletic had a chart about this yesterday. Defensive rating. This is one of those numbers. I try to learn about these numbers one by one. Goals saved above expected's one, expected goals in general, zone entry stuff. A lot of that I've taken time to learn and understand like how that goes into that. This is one where I just don't even know. I know it exists. I know that I see analytics people use it. So take it with a grain of salt. I couldn't explain to you what it is, but there's a thing out there called defensive rating. Who is number one in the NHL this year in defensive rating? It is Sam Reinhart, number one. Just over Jordan Staal, just over Alex Barkov, over Matthews, over Nick Suzuki, Brandon Hagel. These, according to this athletic rating, are the best defenders at forward in the NHL, and Reinhart's number one. So that's the Selke. That's the Selke trophy. And maybe that's what he gets. The Selke's very tough for non-centers to win it. But because he's so high on the goals list, if he's not going to win the Rocket, they're not going to give him the Hart. Maybe this is kind of a consolation prize for Sam Reinhart. But he, no doubt, is having a career season. And it's going to be the best year of his career. He's not going to repeat it. What he's doing, it's a little lucky, but full credit to him. Like, he really was always capable of this. I don't think for a career, but the way Reinhart played in Buffalo, I think you knew. If he got to a more talented team, he was going to see an increase in production. And having a year like this, a one-off, Chris Kreider had this year for the Rangers a couple years ago. He's more of a 25 to 30 goal scorer. But he had that 150 goal year. Jonathan Chichu had a 50-goal season once upon a time. Some good players have that one massive year. Reinhardt's a very good player. He's not a 50-goal scorer. He might end up with 60 this year, but he's never going to repeat it. 27.5 shooting percentage. He scores on almost 30% of his shots. His career is 15.4. He's double where he normally is. And a lot of it is power play production. 22 power play goals on the season, which I think is still more than the Buffalo Sabres have total. Reinhart leads the league in that category, and he's going to get paid. He's coming up on the end of his contract, and maybe Florida keeps him around at like a $9 million contract. That's about what I think he would get. His season might tell you that he'll get around 10, but I think teams are smart enough now to know not to pay because of an insane shooting percentage. So now we look back at the trade. The Sabres got a first-round pick in Devon Levi. The first-round pick became Jiri Kulich. So let's look at this. Where are we at a year after we talked about it last? Let's check in on the Sam Reinhart trade, which I would tell you to start here is on track to be a win-win. Even if the Panthers can't retain Reinhart. I mean, what they do this playoff cycle will matter to this, but he was a big piece of why they went to the finals last year. They didn't win the cup, but they went to the finals, and he was very good. He had 8 goals in 21 games. That's an easy math, right? 21 times 4 is 82. If he did that over the course of a full season, we're talking about 32 goals. So he was a contributor, not the best player on the team, but certainly one of the best players on the team. And this year, I think they're primed and ready to go on another run. They are the favorites to win the Eastern Conference on the betting odds right now. So jury's still a little bit out on the Florida side of it, but I think they are already pretty satisfactory with what they've gotten. If you told them when they made that trade, hey, you're going to trade for Sam Reinhart. It's going to cost you a first and Devon Levi. Reinhart is going to be a contributor for you, a strong top 6 player for the first 2 years. And then in his third year, he's going to go nuclear. He's going to be your best player. He's going to be a Hart Trophy nominee. He's going to be a Selke favorite. He's going to be a Rocket Richard contender. And you're going to be the number 1 seed in the East going into the playoffs. And you're going to get at least one trip to the finals. You'd take that if you were Florida, I think. Even if you didn't know if he'd stay past the third year, I think you'd take that. For the Sabres end of things, I really don't know how much better the development could be going for what they've received. Jiri Kulich, given that he was the 28th pick in that draft, was the least likely, just because of where the pick was, to be a significant contributor compared to the guy they picked in the top 10 and then the guy they picked in the middle of the first round. They got from the Eichel trade and then their own pick. But through a couple of years of development, it's kind of reversed. Kulich, right now, it sounds, enough people sound like this. is outpacing the development of both Matthew Savoy, who was picked way before him, and even Noah Ostlund, who was picked a little bit before him. So Kulich this year in the AHL, coming off a great season last year, historically good for a teenager. Last year, 24 goals in 62 games. This year, 16 goals in 34 games in the AHL. A lot of people think he might be NHL ready. There's a lot of people like an Elliot Friedman or Paul Hamilton or many others that think he's going to get an opportunity to play in Buffalo at the end of this season. And on my mock, lineups for next year, I'm already penciling him in as the third line center if they get rid of Casey Middlestat. So Kulich and his development, it's going really well. And he right now projects as a reliable goal scorer. And for a team that stinks on the power play this year, that's kind of his mantra, right? That's shot on the right wall that could play opposite of Tage Thompson. He's kind of the perfect thing for what they need up front going forward. So that part of the Reinhart trade is going really well. And then the Levi end of it, I think, is still going very well. As a goalie like that had so little experience, even at the minor league level, when they made that trade. I mean, when the Sabres made the trade for Devon Levi, he hadn't even played in college yet. That's how, it was early on in his development. They hadn't even played in college. Really, all they had to go on was 7 games at the World Juniors. And then he became the best college goaltender that we have seen in decades. And then he almost willed the Sabres to the playoffs at the end of last season. Now, this year, 21 years old, maybe expectations were just a little bit too high. Because as I've said this year, he's having a completely normal year for a top-level 21-year-old goalie prospect. He has been okay at the NHL level. Some of his advanced numbers look better than his save percentage, which is an .891. And then down in Rochester, it's only 8 games played, but he's played very well down there. 4-2-2, .918 save percentage, allowing less than 3 goals a game. So he's playing really well at the AHL level. He's been okay at the NHL level, and he's only 21 years old. So 22 years old for Levi. Sorry, he turned 21 or 22 earlier in the season. 22 years old for Levi. It's going fine. And I still think, despite the year Luukkonen's having, Levi right now is ahead of where Luukkonen was at 22, and by a lot, I think, or at least by a solid margin. I still think he projects to be the number 1 goalie of the future. So you're still getting your long-term value, but there's yet to be any real NHL impact, save the 7 games at the end last year for Devon Levi. So right now, to me, it looks pretty good for both sides. Jiri is still out for the Sabres end of things. It's going to take a lot, though, I think, for them to win the trade outright over Florida. Florida got a solid player. They have had 2 of their best seasons here of their entire franchise's history. And it's hard, I think, for a Panthers fan to be too upset. Now, maybe if they go out in the first round and then they lose Reinhart to free agency, maybe it's a little bit easier to call this trade a win. But for now, it's going really well for Florida. The guy is, again, he's going to get Hart votes. He's not going to win it, but he's going to get votes for it. Sam Reinhart. So he's back. By the way, real quick commentary on how well it goes for everybody that leaves here. This is another success story. It's another success story. Eichel leaves and wins the cup. Things are great for him. He's loving it. This is one thing you really want to have stop happening. It's not their fault. You don't even have to root against these guys, but I thought about this for Casey Middlestat today. Middlestat has a contract coming up, and I don't know what he wants to do. He says he wants to stay here long term, so I'll take him at his word. But if Middlestat tomorrow it came out that he doesn't really want to stay here long term, how could you blame him? How could you blame him? Because Middlestat has been here about as long as Reinhart was here, right? Reinhart was here from 15 to 21, so 6 years. This is year 6 for Casey Middlestat. It's the same amount of time. And Middlestat's been here for all this losing. Middlestat's been here for all this doom and gloom that you see in the arena, and it doesn't really feel like the NHL a lot of times. And as a kid growing up in Minnesota, Middlestat doesn't have tied to the area or ties to the Sabres other than being drafted by them. As a kid in Minnesota, dreaming of playing in the NHL, I can't imagine this is what Casey Middlestat dreamed of, playing in front of 13,000 seat arenas where there's no energy and the team's 10 points out of a playoff spot as they go into a 13th year of no playoffs. I mean, that's not what you dreamed of. So, hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully that thought is not entering Middlestats mindset. But if you're Casey Middlestat, you could look at, it worked for Jack. He left, and look how happy he is playing in Vegas, winning the cup. O'Reilly left. Look how happy he is. Look how great his career has turned out since leaving. Look at Sam now. Look at Reinhart. Well, he's leading the league in goals, and his team just went to the finals, and he's got, the beach too, even on top of that, as a little twist of the knife. It doesn't help, I don't think, for these guys when their contemporaries leave and their hockey lives dramatically improve, which is currently happening with Sam Reinhart. He's having the best season of his career. He's living the good life in South Beach. He's in the race for all these major awards. His team is unbelievable. He's about to get paid, in part, by the way, because of who he plays with. It's not lost on me that Reinhart's got massive goal totals, in part because the guy plays with Sasha Barkov all the time. He's playing with one of the best playmaking centers in hockey. That can appeal to a guy. So it's going well for Reinhart. And again, he's enjoying the best season of his career. But the trade might end up being a win-win. When we come back, a quick look at the Florida lineup for tonight's game, why I think they're the best team in the Atlantic Division, and I got my parlay for you, my best bet of the night for Sabres and Panthers. Coming back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, we are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've got hockey going on right now, but college basketball as well. You've got Caitlin Clark going for the record tonight. So a lot of good things going on, and of course the NBA. I'm a huge NBA guy. My Denver Nuggets going for back-to-back. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams. I mean, my favorite is futures. I like looking at the division props, the conference odds, the championship odds, and MVP stuff. But you've got quick bets, you've got live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and plenty more. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Make us your first listen every day. It's not just Sam Reinhart coming back to town. You've got Evan Rodrigues returning again. Rodrigues, by the way, I don't mean to keep, belaboring this point, but another guy that has just seen the best years of his career since he left Buffalo. With the Sabres, the guy had 71 points in 192 games. Here's the last 3 years of Evan Rodrigues' career. 19 goals and 43 points with Pittsburgh. 16 goals and 39 points with Colorado. 8 goals and 32 points this year in 53 games for the Florida Panthers. And if you look at his last 3 years, I mean, the dude's going to the playoffs year after year. He went with Pittsburgh 2 years ago. He went with Colorado last year, and he's certainly going to go with Florida this year. He plays on the third line. Let's go through the lines for Florida, and I'll tell you why I think they are a dominant team, and I would pick them right now to go to the Stanley Cup. Top line, Alex Barkov, Sam Reinhart, Carter Verhaeghe. Barkov drives play like an animal. Reinhart is cashing in on every opportunity that he gets. He's so good defensively as well. The thing about that line is not only are they electric offensively and can score a bunch of goals, that is one of the best defensive top lines in the NHL. They are a shutdown line at the same time. The second line, Matthew Tkachuk, has played with a little bit lesser talent this year because of Reinhart's improvement. But Tkachuk is still obviously incredible. He's playing with Sam Bennett, Nick Cousins, Anton Lundell, Evan Rodrigues, and Eetu Luostarinen, a very young line. And then fourth line, Kevin Stenlund, Ryan Lomberg, and a guy's name that I definitely am not going to be able to pronounce, so I'm not even going to try it for you. Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad on the top pair, Nico Mikola and Brandon Montour in the second pair, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Dmitry Kulikov on pair 3. Montour, massive regression this year. Not to say he's been terrible defensively. I have not been paying enough attention to his game-by-game stuff to see what he's been defensively, but I can tell you from the point totals, 73 points last year, 12 this season. My fantasy team is definitely is not loving that. But Montour still playing 23 minutes a night at the very least. The Panthers are great. And by the way, even if this game is meaningless for the Sabres because of where they are in the standings, the Sabres and the Panthers always play entertaining hockey games because, and this is maybe more of a Florida thing than a Buffalo thing, the Panthers are chippy, right? They've got Tkachuk. Tkachuk is driving everybody crazy for the entire time that he's on the ice. Lomberg on the fourth line is always stirring stuff up. Bennett is stirring stuff up all the time. Montour is a guy that does that too. Kulich throws hits enough to kind of fire things up, but it's a lot of it's Tkachuk, right? Tkachuk drives people crazy. He fires things up. Sometimes he does things that are dirty. And remember, last season, early in the year, I'll retweet the clip at Sneaky Joe Sports if you want to check it out. At the end of the game, Tkachuk and Cousins were going at it, and the two teams were started, throwing, punches at the end, like a mini brawl, if you will. And that was the clip, if you remember, where Rasmus Dahlin, as the teams were exiting the ice, shouted at the Florida Panthers, "In 5 minutes, come find me," because he wanted to fight them back in the tunnel, which I'm guessing didn't end up happening, but whatever. These two teams do not like each other. A lot of teams don't like Florida in general. I think it's going to be an entertaining game, even if the stakes are not really there for the Sabres. For Florida, as I just go through that lineup, and by the way, Anthony Stolarz we're expecting in goal, so you get the backup goaltender, not Sergei Bobrovsky. But if you look at Bobrovsky all the way up, the forward depth that they have, the elite talent they have at forward, the blue line depth. I mean, Kulikov and Ekman-Larsson, veterans that mesh well. Ekman-Larsson for the offensive game and Kulikov for the defensive game. Like 1 through 6 on the blue line and the forward depth, like that to me is the most complete team in the Eastern Conference. I think they're legit. I think they're going to catch Boston. They're only a couple points back to win the Atlantic, and I would pick them to go back to the Stanley Cup final. So, because of how good Florida is and has been all year, leads me to my same game parlay. Let's do a sneaky good parlay for tonight's game, 7 o'clock against the Panthers. Let's start with my belief of how much better Florida is than Buffalo. I'm going Panthers -1.5. I have the Panthers winning this game by 2 or more goals, so I'm starting there. I'm next going to go to a first period goal in the first 5 minutes. The Sabres actually just scored J.J. Peterka against the Kings in the first 5 minutes the other night. We always see them give up a goal in the first 5 minutes. I say there will be a goal scored within the first 5. And then, might as well, let's keep twisting the knife here, Sam Reinhart, anytime goal scorer. The dude's a machine. He scores on the power play consistently. He's on the top line. He's got an elite centerman. He's one of the most consistent goal scorers all year, obviously, only behind Matthews. So I'm going Reinhart goal, Panthers to win by 2 or more, -1.5 on the puck line, in other words. And I'm going for a goal in the first 5 minutes. All of that adds up to +875, 10 to win 87 or 100 to win 875. If you're not sure how the odds usually work for that. And that's it. That's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Appreciate everybody taking some time out to listen today. Check out Locked On Sports today with all that's going on. There's this LeBron to the Warriors rumor that didn't end up happening. Check out Locked On Sports today, Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app, and of course on YouTube as well. Enjoy Sabres and Panthers, and we will talk to you tomorrow. I got to get to my UC Saros trade stuff. I'm excited to talk about him. I love the player, and I like the idea for the Sabres, even if it is a goaltender. That's next here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.